So Mike Elkin, who we just had the meditation, his words, he's saying how you define a problem limits its solutions. If we call something depression or anxiety, we've limited it. We think we know what it is, but actually the real message of today is that we don't know. My depression, my anxiety is different to your anxiety, your anxious parts, your depressed parts. What the root causes are. It reduces it to a problem. Maybe it's a thing you want to get rid of, or limit, or fix. It also makes it too simple. In the IFS world, it's very much considered that both of these are both psychological and biological components, which vary according to the individual person. And IFS makes it workable to see these experiences of anxiety and depression as a whole as coping mechanisms of parts, either inherited or in the present day. Parts using biological vulnerabilities as levers to gain influence. That's very much the view of Frank Anderson. It could be purely biological, maybe something to do with your particular neurotype, or the result of some sort of physical trauma. And linked to that, it may be inherited, like a biological vulnerability. And then this is where it's all interesting, isn't it? But it could be your exiles. It could be those parts of you, the feeling parts of you that we've pushed to the background, that are trying to gain attention. Maybe the sadness, the despair of those exiles, or the terror and the fear. So it might be the little ones in IFS terms, or the whole system trying to keep those down, trying to keep them back. So then the protective parts come and they try desperately to keep them squashed, but the whole system becomes anxious while they're trying to do that. It could be protective parts being polarized. There's never just one part in anxiety and depression. It's just not that simple. And so you might have one part and another part that doesn't want it, that wants to try and get rid of it. You've got a polarization, you've got a fight going on inside, which is going to create anxiety, or you'll sort of collapse a bit. And finally, it might not be depression at all. It might be grief. I'm seeing some nodding. This is often the work of therapy, is grief. Grief, layer upon layer upon layer. So, internal family systems, a simple model. We have the same answer for everything. Every time you come here, it's like, let's work with our parts, let's get to know them, let's sit and have tea with them, make friends with them, breathe with them, ask them to relax, get them to find a self to part relationship. If there's a polarization, we get to know the polarization. Job done. Lecture over, really. It isn't quite as simple as that, but it is as simple as that. So it's getting the parts that are expressing themselves in a burdened way in touch with self. And then we can offer them ways of relaxing their stuck positions and trying something different, offering them hope. When I turn up, and I heard someone talking about their self-energy, when we're here in self-energy, everything in your system does relax. It's like the adults come into the room and I'm here and, it's okay. And the system does tend to slow down and relax. So I'm not going to go into the basics of IFS, but, the 6 Fs in the starter pack, please, you'll find a part, you find it where it is in your body, focus on it, get to know it, find out its hopes, its fears, check, how do I feel towards it? And if you're feeling all selfie, great, but if you've got oh, I don't like it, I really want to get rid of it, you've got a polarization. Great, come to the party. It becomes really interesting and fascinating, and guaranteed, if there are protector parts, they have such good intentions. They are wanting something for you. They are wanting to protect you in some way. So by, getting rid of them, that's going to have impacts. So what I'm noticing when I wrote this is that some bits are a little bit bitty, so excuse me, but I've written here a few things to check for. Number one, check for jobs. When you're doing your 6Fs, check for jobs. Are you doing a job for me? Anxious part in my belly or whatever. What's your hope for me? What's your mission? Oh, I'm wanting to let you know that there's some danger out there, or I'm wanting to, okay, so you have a job. Great. And then you can find out the job if your parts talk to you. But I just wanted to put that sometimes there are no answers. And I have clients that get very frustrated that, IFS says you just ask a part and it gives you an answer. And so I've added in some little caveats here. What if we ask and there's no response? So Joanne Twombly, and I didn't bring her book, but she's written a fabulous book on IFS, trauma and dissociation. She says, just keep turning up. Just keep turning up. They're watching, they're listening. If self hasn't been there for, in my case, sort of 50 odd years, they're going to take time to answer you. Where is it? Maybe it's young, very, very young, and pre-verbal and not able to speak. I don't know if anyone's seen the amazing film In Utero. It's got Gabor Mate. I'm seeing some nodding. Really recommend it. But again, just if the feelings are there, you're just sitting with and breathing. It's not necessarily voices. It may be that you come up with some blocking parts, some protector parts, some fog, some numbing. And again, it's sitting with, being with, there's a lot in IFS about just hanging out, pausing with parts. I wanted to really add in about biology. It's like, I'm asking a part, are you doing a job? And there's nothing. Maybe it's your biology. I mean, I know my particular neurotype is, my brainwaves have, they're fast. I see it on my neurofeedback machine. I have a lot of high beta and beta that makes my brainwaves run faster. If I am doing a test, I come out as really not normal. That's a surprise. Whatever normal is, which leads me to think fast and be excited about life. Great. But it also has most of my life made me feel really anxious. Other people have naturally, biologically, much slower brainwaves. And they can relax and they can chill, which, hasn't really been in my vocabulary for a long while, more so now. But that also might let them be more prone biologically to depression. So I just wanted to pop that in. So if you don't get an answer, it may be biology. And so often, and if you're often speaking to parts and they are speaking to you and you ask and they don't answer, it might be biology. So that's one lot of things to check for is about, are they protectors or exiles, or is it biology? Secondly is checking for polarizations. I wonder if you find that parts holding anxiety and ones that depress may be in a state of polarization. Check and see, keep checking. If I'm depressed, there's very likely to be a part of me that hates my depression. If I'm anxious, there's very likely to be a part of me that hates my anxiety and wants it to go away. And they're maybe trying to control or avoid each other. For those of you that are around, I think some of you were in November, we talked about polarizations, and it's on my website if you want to go and read more about it. Classic IFS polarization, firefighter manager, but as we talked about, you can have exile polarizations, manager polarizations. So a manager who wants us to be out in the world to get external recognition, and another one that wants us to hide, to fit in, to be smaller. And how's that that's going to create anxiety in your system, isn't it, if those two are having a bit of a fight? You know, I have that right now. I'm being videoed. And then there's another part that's, and you check for layers too. So some parts might not just be protecting an exile, they might be protecting another protector. So often I see, you know, those that have parts that want to drink to excess. If you take them out, if you just say, right, stop drinking, you might get another protector coming out, which might be like a suicidal part. And you know, we make friends with suicidal parts. Suicidal parts will also have good intentions for you. So the view of IFS is rarely one part. Anne Cinco, Martha Sweezy, Mike Elkin, always believe it's always groups of parts. So, internal system, it's a belief in many therapeutic models that we're always moving towards health. We try to go towards health. And IFS is a systemic model. And again, the system is trying to move towards health. So if the exiles, the ones that have been hidden behind you, they're wanting you, they're wanting your love and help and support and unburdening from you. OCR always talks about it coming over the line. They want to come over the line. They want to open Pandora's box and get healed by you. But all the protectors are wanting to keep it down. So there's something really important here about the internal system systemically is often inherently anxious until we've unburdened those little ones and self has made friends with these parts. And the other systemic thing is, and Mike Elkin says it's the truth of IFS, is his belief that protectors always get what they don't want. So protectors are trying to get you to chill, but actually they might get the opposite because they're trying one thing, but actually that tends not to work. So third thing now to check for is check for the inherited portion. So let's see what's inherited and what's yours. Again, it's ask. And last year, when was it? April, we did a big thing on generational and legacy burdens. So I do suggest, if you want to, a synthesized version, you can look at that next on my website. But legacy burdens are belief systems, coping mechanisms, memories and energies of our ancestors that get passed down the generational line. So I'm going to ask each one of you here and now, you know, choosing one of your parts, whether anxiety or depression, something you've struggled with your entire life. Do you have symptoms that don't fit with your history? This level of depression doesn't make sense to me. My life is good. I have things in order. I just don't know why I have this anxiety. Or who in my family has had these symptoms? You know, did mum, did grandma? Always a good idea to do a genogram. It's really fascinating doing a genogram. And you can ask your parts, whether you can do it here or later, when did you take on this burden? If the answer's always, you know, and you can ask which line, can you give me more information? Asking the parts, it's great. So you've got your pieces of paper. I'm going to ask you to pick up the pen, non-dominant hand. You've drawn a circle. Can I get you, this is a pie chart, can I get you to just write and colour in the proportion of your anxiety or depression that isn't yours? Colour it in, quick, go. Don't think, just go. The more you think about it, the more you'll sort of tell yourself this isn't it. So just excuse me for rushing you. But who was over 50% isn't yours? There we go. That's quite a lot, isn't it? It's really interesting how so much of this has come through generations, biological or, you know, epigenetics. And so there are ways of letting that go. There are ways of, you know, really helping legacy burdens to be lifted. I wanted to just bring in energetics, and I wanted to bring in polyvagal that isn't IFS, but Deb Dana's done such a fab job of bringing polyvagal to IFS. She does both. So I really recommend Deb Dana's work. And so I did, with the help of Maid Wirawan, a version of her talk. There we go. And so just checking inside energetically how anxiety feels. And anxiety generally hangs out in amber. It's sympathetic activation. So just 2 out of 10, just allow yourself to, I don't know, go into a railway station and, or a shopping mall, or just allow yourself 2 out of 10 to feel anxious. Do you notice sort of levels of sympathetic, this is sympathetic arousal? And then what happens if you bump into a friend you haven't seen for a long while and you're really glad to see them? You go into regulated sympathetic arousal. So you're excited. So this can either be anxiety or it can be excitement. So then, just again, 2 out of 10, inviting you to feel into a little bit of low depression, sadness, collapse. Just 2%. You're not feeling, or 2% or 2 out of 10. It's not 2%. And, how is it in your system? How do you feel? And then just feeling that. And then move to actually choosing to be here, choosing to be resting, choosing, you've got your headphones on, you're listening to some lovely music, blinds down, under the cozy covers, regulated also. Yeah, so it's just energetically just wanting to try this out. Now, can I invite all of us together? We can come up the dorsal, up from dorsal, coming up the polyvagal ladder into our equivalent of, ventral vagal is as close to self as we can imagine. So just inviting you to remember a time when you felt really good, or you're looking in nature and or you're feeling regulated because you've got lovely people around you, and how that feels. Calm, compassion, presence, curiosity, flow, things like that. So where did the exiles and managers and protectors hang out? So exiles can either be low into dorsal. They're the ones that are feeling sad and shameful and they want to hide. But other exiles are wanting to reach out, and they're wanting your love and help, and I need you, and they're fearful and they're terrified. So just sort of knowing this, I find really helpful. I don't know about you. Then some anxious protectors are really both firefighters and managers. I thought I'd just make that less, I'd just put them together today. They keep the energy high. They intentionally keep the energy high. I have hypervigilant parts, and they're, looking out for danger constantly to keep me alert for being attacked, both verbally and physically. Really helpful, but it keeps me anxious. So these ones get you to take risks and give you catastrophizing thoughts, and they might get us to do videos and put stuff on social media, keep us busy, controlling, in conflict with people, drugs that take us up. So just noticing those sorts of managers and firefighters that are intentionally keeping us active. And then some protectors depress. Again, ask inside, what happens for you? Depression may be a coping mechanism of a part or group of parts that believe that taking all the energy out of the system is a way of protecting you. When we anaesthetize ourselves, when we're depressed, we have a sort of fuzzy blanket between us and the rest of the world. We have no real capacity to feel joy or experience beauty and nature, but we have also a diminished capacity to feel pain. And that trade-off is maybe acceptable to the parts that use it. So a protector who amplifies depression might make us stay home and avoid taking risks to make ourselves smaller and number. So we don't shine, we don't go out and take risks, which might lead us to be seen, make mistakes, get criticised, and then feel shame. Much better to stay in. One immobilises the body might hobble an angry part or it might hobble at the suicidal part. So it says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make you low so you don't go off and do this, because that's more dangerous to this particular part. And we might have firefighters that intentionally keep us low, like Valium and dope and dissociation. Oh, that was really, yeah, I had a part that was going, yeah, that sounds good. So here's the biggie. So that's the energetics. IFS at the basis, so Mike Elkin and Anne Cinco and Martha Sweezy talk about that shame is at the basis of most anxiety and depression. And really interesting. So this is Martha Sweezy's book, amazing. Again, we did a talk before Christmas, if you want a synthesized version of her little the cycle. So if you really get to know your parts, you might find they are deep down focused on keeping that feeling of shame so hidden, so cut off. As we know, protectors don't get what they hope for, and the system is always moving towards healing. So those exiles will always be looking for you. But again, don't take my word for it. Ask inside what works for you. So I'm using Martha's, I did a shame cycle in 6, she'd done the shame cycle in 6 acts, but if you remember this, we did a talk. And you can also put this really easily on the triangle, the managers. So these are the exiles, well, the exiles are here, hidden behind the curtain. These are the managers, and these are the firefighters. And self-compassion is the exit. So, is the way through. So, Acts 1 and 2. Acts 1 and 2, bad thing happens, a child is shamed by someone, a grown-up or a school or whatever. And if the shaming hits the vulnerability in the recipient, especially a child, it has a good chance of becoming an identity burden. I am bad. I am not enough. I am shameful. I am a mistake. This state of being produces anxiety all around the recipient's internal system. The exile longs to be loved. Its belief that it's worthless, depressed feelings, and fears being rejected, anxious feelings. They long for redemption. I don't know about any of you, but that chimes in my system. So then, getting older, so what happens is then the whole system then tries to protect against that so that you don't do that. So the managers are constantly trying to improve you then. So that the managers are the proactive ones, and they don't want you to feel shameful again. So they're always trying to improve you by calling you stupid or trying to get you to impress people or whatever. So upgrade shameful qualities. And they're anxious, so they shame, and so that's going to make you more anxious. And they call names to motivate us to do something different. But that makes us feel low and bad about ourselves, or unbearably anxious. Ask what happens to you when you have your internal critic having a chat to you. What happens? The anticipatory scouts, Act 4, the ones that are, they're looking out for criticism externally and internally. They again don't want us to feel the shamefulness, but they're anxious. Can you feel how anxious they are to be seen or to be not seen, or to be a little bit of a hologram of yourself so that you look good in the world and you're a bit perfect, or caretaking or whatever. Makes the person smaller, which creates more shameful feelings and more anxiety and more depressed feelings. Those are the managers. The firefighters, and they don't come definitely, and they don't have to go in the cycle, they can whiz round and fight against each other. The firefighters pinch hit for each other. They blame the other person. It's not me, it's you, partner or whoever, politician, and it deflects the shamefulness underneath. But of course, if I'm gonna have a go at my partner, they're gonna have a go back at me. Maybe not, but it's likely to create more conflict, more anxiety. And finally, all those lovely, hard-working, I really like firefighters, and managers too, obviously. Love you both, everyone. Counteract the exiles' anxious longings by self-soothing with substances, food, sex, dissociation, meditation of the spiritual bypass, variety, which protective part dissociates, online surfing. So the shamefulness isn't exposed, it's squashed down. So some firefighters bring us down and some up. 2 quick things. So I just wanted to quickly talk about medication, because that's often, I'm seeing some nodding, it sounds like it's a good thing. Obviously, this is a major topic, but of particular interest. So Frank Anderson, if you want to check that out, I'm seeing nodding there, synthesizing it. If you're thinking of medication, please have a parts party and come and talk to your parts and hear what they have to say. Get a big piece of paper and, how am I feeling towards medication? Oh, I judge it, or I don't want to do it, or oh, I really want some, or whatever. And hear what they have to say. It may be one part wants another part to disappear, but because it's a system, if it disappears, something else is going to happen. And that part might be trying to look after you in some way. Having self there to listen and be there, befriend, and consciously make choices is really different. You're not going to have such a backlash. That's a managing part. Ask inside, does anyone else have any views? Any more? Write it on a piece of paper and find out. I want to say I have no agenda here whether you should or shouldn't take medication. But protectors may be protecting from another layer of parts, as I mentioned about the alcohol and suicidal part, for example. Medication may be really helpful for some people to take the edge off the extremity of the anxiety or the depression, so you then can actually start working with parts. I've certainly had clients, and I know of others that have had clients that some low levels have been really helpful, and then for some others it hasn't been so. So I just wanted to pop that in. Last few words, I wanted to say a bit about grief. And Anne Cinco is your lady, if you want to look up. And she has a thing on YouTube about this amazing book by Francis Weller, which talks about, I think, was it the 7 gates of grief? But grief is not depression. Depression is not grief. It's really normal and healthy to have grief. And most of us who had really difficult childhoods, and we've inherited griefs from, generations back, and we might not even know why we feel grief. But so often, our society doesn't help us grieve. We're told to stop it. So it's likely you'll have grief upon grief upon grief upon grief. And, it's really healthy. Like Babette Rothschild talks about, opening a Coke bottle and letting a little out and then closing it, and opening a little out and closing it. That's about trauma, but same about grief. Not having the parents or the childhood that we needed, not having, there's a climate emergency. We're meant to be in community. We don't live in community. Well, we are here, aren't we? But there's many, many, many things that you might grieve, that you don't have the health that you want or you needed, or a relationship split. So often we can label it depression, but actually grief needs to be felt. It's so normal. This is my work every day. Therapy is grieving. It's really healthy to do. I think and we couldn't, if you grow up with a lot of shaming and shamefulness, you get stopped talking about your grief, and we couldn't get support about it, and so it was repressed, depressed, our grief depressed. So our exiles end up holding and handling all the grief, and they get more and more layered, and then managers hold it at bay. They might tell you what's making it sad. Ask them, talk with your parts. So it's normal and natural, and we need to go through it. Golden trailheads. So there we are. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that made sense to you all.